What do you think of JoJo's?
It's nice.
It's not bad, huh?
Yeah.
That's a nice use of space, I think. I really think they did it. They did it.
Order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, be with us this evening as we do the business for the city and the good and the welfare of the community. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Item C, approval of agenda. So this is the approved agenda for August 8th, 2022, regular planning commission meeting.
Make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You're allowed to vote now. Item D, citizens' comments. This is to allow citizens to comment on anything that they feel is appropriate to comment on. They're allowed 3 minutes. Each guest is welcome to comment, but they must state their first and last name and where they reside. Gentleman behind me is for an agenda item, the only agenda item on. So if anybody else has any comments, you don't have to comment. Okay, your agenda item.
All right, we'll close citizens' comments.
Very good. Item E, approval of minutes. So this is to approve the planning commission regular meeting minutes from July 11, 2022. Quick reflection, we had a special use for Camp Bow Wow and the Rusted Bean site plan.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from July 11, 2022.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Item F, Board of Zoning Appeals. This is item F.1. This is a sign variance for Goddard Wine and Spirits, case number VAR-22-2. Quick background, Anders, I'm going to give this a go. Herpensheimer? Herpensheimer. Okay. Anders H. of Ron Sign Co. has submitted a sign variance request on behalf of the applicant, Goddard Central Wine and Spirits, to place a second wall sign on the south-facing side of the leased building at 19950 West Kellogg Drive, which is the old Dollar Tree. Article 7 of sign regulations only allows one sign per lot unless it is a through lot or corner lot, and then one wall sign allowing per frontage to face that street. Goddard Central Wine and Spirits wants to take the sign that they would be allowed on the west side and move it to the south side. The variance requires publication in city newspaper in 20 days to elapse before they can be considered by the BZA. A variance requires letters to be sent out to everyone within 200 feet of the property within city limits and 1,000 feet outside city limits. There have been no comments on this one. So. This is F1 analysis. This is Article 10-107.c. This allows certain types of variances, and this outlines what kind of variances that would be allowed under the subdivision regulations. Number 5 in orange, it says to vary the applicable dimensional sign provisions of Section 7-102 regarding general standards and Section 7-104 regarding district regulations. So signs are allowed under number 5 under Article 10-107.c. And then standards, the purple is my comment. So these are the 5 criteria that allows for a variance. And then, of course, it's open to debate and discussion. And like I said, purple is my answer to them. The board may grant a variance upon specific written findings of fact based upon particular evidence presented to it at the hearing that all conditions required by Kansas statutes annotated KSA 12-759E have been met, which are listed below. Number 1, that the variance requested arise from such conditions which are unique to the property in question, which is not ordinarily found in the same zoning district, and is not created by an action or actions of the property owner or the applicant. So it's not created by the property owner. It hasn't been, signs haven't been put up yet. It is unique as the corner lot, which will allow an additional wall sign on the west side. So as mentioned, this is a corner lot. It would allow an additional wall sign. So one wall sign abutting each street frontage. So it's abutting Kellogg, North Frontage Road, and it's abutting 199th. And so technically it's allowed 2 wall signs. However, those wall signs are only allowed for the streets that they're abutting, so we only allow one on the south side, one on the west side. So what they're asking for is to flip it around so that it would be on the south side. The granting of the variance will not adversely affect the signs, or excuse me, the rights of adjacent property owners or residents, and the property is in a commercial district, so there's not anything that affect anybody residentially speaking. The strict application of the provisions of these regulations from which a variance is requested will constitute a necessary hardship upon the property owner represented in the application. So typically, as is mentioned, which we've heard before, and particularly when we had Brahms in here, is that the hardship will be in the inability to market as effectively, given that it's abutting US 54 and that the speed limits goes from 60 to 50 back up to 60 again. And so as people whiz by, it's harder for them to catch their eye. And so the more signage available, gross square footage, and the more availability of signs allows them to market more effectively. And those are the typical arguments that you'd hear. And so that would be the inability to market as effectively. That would be the hardship that's put on the property owner if he's not allowed to have another south-facing wall sign. So that the variance desired would not adversely affect public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, or general welfare, and that the granting of the variance desired would not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of these regulations. So I wrote right here, will not affect health, safety, or welfare. They're not asking to put the sign in like a vision triangle or something like that. It's not overly large or ostentatious type of sign. And the intent of these regulations safeguard the built environment. So it is the intent of these regulations, generally speaking, to safeguard the built environment. And in the staff's opinion, that one additional wall sign on such a large building will not compromise the intent of the regulations, as mentioned, that we're simply flipping it from the west side to the south side. So I don't believe that's a gross violation of what would be the intent of the regulations. So here's some of the signage that you have here. As you can see, they have Goddard Wine and Spirits right over here. This one is approved as their south-facing wall sign, and then they want this additional wall sign right over here, which should also be on the south side as a secondary wall sign. This is currently as it stands, says right now. They don't have any south-facing wall signs, so like I said, this is not a violation of what the leasee is requesting. Public notice was given incurring a small cost. Legally, it's approved as the form. It is recommended that the Planning Commission approve the sign variance request for case number VAR-22-2. And as mentioned, Andrews is here, representing the developer. If you want to speak on this matter, feel free. If you have any questions.
Of course, that will go off right now. Yeah, another point we wanted to point out is that that front elevation isn't all just uniform line. The main sign bumps out farther. The AutoZone sign is set back, and this sign would also be set back. So it would be coming from the side, you would be able to see it a little bit easier. But we just feel like it's not over large. We're not trying to blow the wall off or anything. They just want to put a reader board up so they can throw out some specials that they're running that week and just have another sign for marketing purposes right there.
Do you know if they're gonna put one out there by the street below the AutoZone sign? They're gonna
Below it?
Yeah, they're gonna be anything out there?
No, we're gonna take that top panel above the AutoZone, and then actually I've talked with the owner from Goddard Central Wine and Spirits about the rejuvenation project, and he's actually for demoing that sign and putting in a new monument to follow the new code. But he doesn't want to float the bill all by himself, so he's going to be working with the landlord and AutoZone to see if that'll take place, hopefully soon.
I'll interject real quick. When he's speaking of the rejuvenation project, what he's speaking of is that Planning Commission approved some changes to the sign regulations, and City Council approved those changes, which means that anytime a property sells to a new property owner, the sign would change from a pole sign. They'd be required to change from a pole sign to a monument sign. However, this gentleman who wants to put up Goddard Central Wine and Spirits, he's actually a leasee. He's not an owner. So originally we thought he was buying the property, and which we would have required him to change it from a pole sign to a monument sign. Then it turned out he was just leasing the property. There's no actual transfer of ownership, which would have initiated the monument sign change. However, as mentioned, he's actually in favor the potential to change it to a monument sign. And so that's just something that's been under discussion right now. What would that look like if you switch that pole sign out into a monument sign? What signs would be accommodating on that on a monument sign? Because they got that AutoZone and everything else as well. And so that's just something to take into account.
Yeah, but for the bottom sign on or that cabinet on the pole sign, I think I want to take it out, but I mean, that comes up to the landlord, but I think we're going to try to talk him to take that out because it'd be just as expensive to put in anything to fix it.
Well, you probably can't answer this, for any possibility of them tying banners between them two poles.
To cover that up?
Well, just for advertising.
I mean, if that went through me, I would assume it needed a permit first.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody have any comments?
No comments.
Need a motion?
That's
good.
for a motion.
I make a motion, we approve the sign variance request.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Very good. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the evening. If not, have a good day.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Item G, old business, there is none. Item H, new business, there is none. I will mention for item H, we had a lot of plats come up. A lot of them are under review right now, so we were going to have some plats for today, but we're going to kick them into September, just so we can give more due diligence for attorneys and engineers to give them some break. So basically, we'll be considering multiple plats probably in September. Item I, staff report. So as you probably know, we have a new planning commissioner. His name is Daniel Hayden. The planning commissioners operate on a 3-year term basis. 1/3 of the planning commissioners being reappointed each year. The mayor appoints the planning commissioners to office, and they are confirmed by the governing body. Jody Crow stepped down from the planning commission after her position became untenable due to changes in the bylaws that required all planning commissioners to reside within city limits unless otherwise specified by state law. The city council did approve amending the planning commission bylaws on February 7th, 2022. Daniel Hayden resides in the city limits of Goddard, fulfilling the bylaw requirements and comes recommended by Mayor Zimmerman. He was approved by the City Council on August 1st, 2022. Daniel Hayden currently works at Skyward Credit Union as the Vice President of Operations and graduated from Kate State University, Bachelor's of Science, General Business Administration in 2008, and he completed the Southwest Credit Union National Associate Management School. So please join me in congratulating Daniel Hayden to the Planning Commission Board. Item I.1, Economic Report. So I like to give these economic reports because you guys are locked in place, you can't leave, so might as well. So these are single-family permits by year since 2000. Each color represents a different city. We try to pull cities that are more comparable to us. Obviously, cities can fluctuate in population pretty dramatically, but Wichita would be statistically an outlier, so we try to omit that. Low end would be like Viola, with like population of like less than 1,000 or around 1,000. Wichita obviously being closer to 400,000. Those are two outliers, so we try to pull cities that are more comparable. But as you can see, in terms of permits per year, we tend to hit about the middle mark, and then we dip around 2010, and then we're starting to pick back up again. Obviously, this is generally in line with some of the economic trends, and you see most cities tend to follow these economic trends as well. But we tend to be right around the middle mark, generally speaking, which is pretty good considering our population size by comparison. For example, we tend to outpace Valley Center, which has a greater population than we do. And this is 2022 year-to-date for single-family detached permits only. So this is only for single-family detached permits. The Wichita Area Builders Association, WABA, is where we generate this information from. They only track single-family detached, so they're not going to track twin homes, duplexes, quadplexes, or triplexes. And so when we contribute data to their information, we can request that information back, and that helps us generate these reports. And so as you can see, year-to-date, we still are falling right about the middle mark. Right now, we're catching up to Bel Air. Obviously, Bel Air has a slightly larger population than us and is a high destination area. Mays, we're ahead of Mays right now. Mays is one of our biggest competitions due to the school district. Obviously, when people move into the Wichita metro area, they're going to look for jobs first and then a comparable school district. And so Mays and Goddard are neck and neck, but right now we are outpacing Mays as it comes to building permits for single family detached, and we're hoping that that trend will continue into the future. So this is the 5496 bypass design to date. I stripped a lot of the sort of the erroneous information out of it because there's a lot of nuanced data if you dive in each individual section. Obviously, it was designed in AutoCAD by engineers, and so what we really wanted to see was just a general outline. How does this impact Goddard as it comes down from Mays, and where does it actually exit out of Goddard and connect back down again? So as you can see here, they're going to come down. 96 is up here. I'm pointing to the ceiling, obviously way over here, but it's going to come down from Mays. And it's supposed to come down and just be a little bit west of 167th, and come down and hit Maple, and then come down over here to this Cloverleaf area that's been designed. And then this area over here is actually supposed to be a flyover. Now, granted, these designs tend to change over time, so this is not definitive, right? This is more a tentative design, but this is the most recent design that we have to date. And we are working with the state as changes happen to the design and to learn of any acquisition of land, right-of-way acquisition that's necessary for the 5496 bypass. This is the R-cut, which is known as the restricted crossing U-turn intersection R-cut. So this design is also subject to change. We are working with KDOT, the Kansas Department of Transportation, and a transportation engineering firm known as Trans Systems. This R-cut is basically, the outline is something very similar to this. You'd be heading westbound, and then you would queue up over here, and then that queue you would allow to turn into Crown Drive. And then obviously we have our Goddard Genesis down in this area with the baseball diamonds. As you were exiting, you would hit Crown Drive again, and you would head up. This median right here prohibits you from actually heading west on the frontage road, so you would have to either head east, or you could exit onto US 54, queue back up over here, and then turn back around onto 54 and head westbound. This here is part of a design change that we have run with Trans Systems to actually incorporate a roundabout over here, connecting this Crown Drive to the frontage road on this section over here, and with a future connection at some point down the road to this private drive, and we have Brahms right over here. From what I understand, this restricted crossing U-turn R-cut is unique to Kansas, and so we're not 100% sure how this will play out, but generally speaking, it seems to be one of the most effective designs for this area, given congestion and the fact that we have north and south frontage road.
What's the timing on either one of those that you're?
So originally, and this discussion has been ongoing for a long time. Originally, the R-cut did not come with the roundabout over here. It was separate. It was just this R-cut, and we had it aligned with the north frontage road realignment around First National Bank. That was one project. We submitted that to KDOT, and they approved it. And then the gentleman who approved it stepped down. He retired, and the new gentleman who stepped in said, "Well, we're okay with this, but we need them to be submitted again as two separate projects." And so that's why you have the north frontage road realignment around the First National Bank has already been put in, and this one has not been put in yet. For that very reason, is that they had to be resubmitted as two separate projects. Now, we are working on funding and the potential for amending this design, so this is not a final design. So that way we can't go to bidding yet for the construction of it because this is not finalized. But this is the most recent design that we have for this layout.
What about the bypass? Is there any timing on that one?
No, the bypass, since that's an interjurisdictional agreement between Mays, Goddard, the state, and the county, it's been a little bit difficult to actually have a time frame of when the 5496 bypass would actually come about to fruition, when it actually manifests itself. It's really kind of up in the air. Every time projections for cost are evaluated, the cost keeps going up. So originally when I was sitting in on some of these meetings in 2019, the cost was around $500 million, around $500 million. The next time we had the meeting, it was around $750 million. The next time we had a meeting, it was about $1 billion, and right now it's about $1.2 billion. And so the cost is just, it keeps going up, and the cost for land as well, the right-of-way acquisition is also keeps going up. And so every time you see, anytime this design impacts the built environment, so any buildings, residential, commercial, or otherwise, that cost to buy that land, it goes up as well. And even land that is raw land, if that land gets platted, that land becomes more valuable, and KDOT has to pay for that difference as well. So if you own raw land and KDOT's design, for example, were to run through it, if that land gets platted, then you have to pay more for that land. So the right-of-way acquisition costs have continued to increase since this design was conceptualized, I think, back in the late 1990s. So it might be a while, just generally speaking.
Weird question, what would the speed limit be from like 183rd down towards?
So it really depends. So right now we have two questions right about speed limit. So if we have this one coming through, typically a DOT takes into account multiple factors, one of them being volume, another one being speed, volume, safety, and there's a couple other general factors that they take into account. But I'm assuming if it's a flyover, it's going to be unrestricted in that way. So you're still looking at possibly 60 plus miles per hour coming around this area over here. It might slow down obviously on this turn, but we're not sure. I'm not a
What
transportation
about this
engineer.
arc cut?
The R-Cut one currently right now is 60 to 50, and then it goes to 60 again. I think they're going to slow it down, but I'm not sure. I can't speak definitively on that one either. We hired a transportation engineering firm to generate those numbers, and we're not sure exactly what that would look like. Or if we are sure, I just haven't heard it yet. So
Are they gonna put stoplights in, or just the turn lane?
I think right now they're just going to have a turn lane with no stoplight. So these are some general costs that have been generated. What I'm trying to do here is kind of outline cost of infrastructure from the public side versus the sort of cash flow that we get from property taxes in that area. So what we're looking at here is about 109 lots, and I believe it was the 3 Fountains West. So 3 Fountains West is off of Main Street right here in 23rd, and this is Walnut right over here. It's about 109 lots. And when we were taking into account the amount of linear infrastructure that we have here, sewer, water, storm sewer, and streets, what are those costs generally speaking? Because we get petitions, engineering petitions for this infrastructure cost. And so we can kind of use that to overlay it on existing infrastructure to say, well, it's conceptually about this much money. Given the unit cost that we see for like 8-inch PVC for sewer or 8-inch PVC for water, we say it's about $22 or $25 per linear foot. And so we can say, well, we have X number of linear feet here, so we can calculate that. And then when we get the petitions for streets or storm sewer, we can actually sort of generally overlay that on top of existing infrastructure to see what that total cost would be. So give or take, this total infrastructure cost is over $1 million, generally speaking. There's about 109 lots in that area. We pulled the property taxes by generating just a simple calculation of the appraised and assessed value that we get from the county, because we get parcel data from the county, so we can overlay that with assessed value and generate a mill number that we apply, and then it calculates what our total taxes that we're deriving from this area is. And so generally speaking, we're going to get about $60,000 from 109 lots. Total would be about $68,000, give or take. But $6,000 is going to the library, and then we have another $2,000 that would be dedicated towards debt and general bond obligations for paying off bonds. And so we're getting about $60,000, I'd say, currently off of this, of 109 lots in that area. And as you can see here, what this breakdown is per color of the year that it was actually built. And so we see that about 109 lots. The first one was built in about 1978, 1979, and the last one was built in 2009. So this is kind of unique for this area because we're seeing about a 38-year gap between the first house that was built and the last house that was built. Now, typically we don't see it that long for that delay of 109 lots. For example, Cloverleaf is almost done. They only have 36 lots left, and they have 130 lots total. And so we can see that Cloverleaf was conceptualized in 2019, and it's almost done, and it'll probably be finalized and completed in 2023. So obviously 38 years is not the norm, but it's something to consider when we're talking about these properties coming online and cash flowing some of our public infrastructure costs. So this is kind of what it would look like. Our sunk cost is the $1 million that it costs that we would borrow with a bond issuance. And then let's say that about 5% of the properties come online each year. So that 20-year mark, we have all the properties come online. By online, I mean it's actually got a certificate of occupancy, and we're generating property taxes off of it. And so we see that about 5% of that would be about $3,000 for that year. And then the next year we have 6, and then next year and so on and so forth until we get to the 20-year mark, and we're getting that $60,000. And then if we add an additional 6% for the increased valuation year over year, then we'd say that total between year 1 and year 30, we're generating about $1.4 million in collected property taxes off that infrastructure, off that private property. But then we have to take into account the 1 million and the additional inflation. Let's say inflation was 1.5 year over year on average. Then we would take that $1 million and we'd add that 1.5% year over year. And it's compounded out to 1.6 million. So that's a deficiency of about $236,000. And so you can kind of see generally the breakdown of the cost of infrastructure relative to what that infrastructure is serving and how much property taxes we derive off of it. And so that's just something to take into consideration, because we know that some of the older properties in Old Goddard, for example, all these properties here, they're not considered generally that old, but we know that further north, when you get in north of Santa Fe, south of US 54 and west of 199, those properties are built in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, and they're smaller lots, they're smaller footprint sizes, and we know that generally speaking, the condition of those properties may be considered below average compared to the county at large, or the average for the city of Goddard. And so those properties are going to be cash flowing even less when it comes to actually the infrastructure costs for pipes and sewers and everything else. I think, in generally speaking, there's probably about 150 lots in between Santa Fe, north of Santa Fe and west of 199, somewhere around that area. And it's probably going to be nowhere near the 60,000, might even be somewhere less. So just something to take into account, something food for thought when we talk about maximizing land and the value of the properties that sit on that land for cash flowing long-term infrastructure costs.
Well, that spreadsheet, are you factoring any kind of maintenance cost in there?
So yeah, generally speaking, we're not factoring maintenance. This is just going to be cost in general, the unit cost, without taking into account like a 10% for engineering and maintenance or anything of that nature. We're not taking into account the hourly rate for public works employees when they're doing the maintenance or anything like that. This is just an infrastructure only material cost, generally speaking. And it's pretty rough, as you can see, but the numbers themselves in terms of what we're pulling, that's pretty on point. Because when we get the parcel data from the county, that's an easy calculation to simply take the assessed value that we actually get for each parcel and then simply add a calculation for the mill levy that we're going to be levying against those, and we can get a total cost for how much we're pulling from those properties. And that's it for that one. So we move on to item J, Planning Commissioner comments.
No comment.
No.
No comment.
No comment?
No comment.
Somebody's got a comment.
Welcome.
That'd be my comment.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks. I got nothing.
Nothing. All right. Then this is item K, adjournment. So next regular Planning Commission meeting will be September 12th, 2022 at 7 p.m.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Very good. Thank you very much. Are we offline? Very good.